Imagine ruling half the world, still going bankrupt every 20 years. Imagine mountains of gold and silver flowing into your empire, yet ordinary people grow poorer by the day. This was Spain in the 16th century, the richest empire the world had ever seen, and the most fragile. Today, its story is more than history. It's a warning about wealth, power, and the illusions that can destroy a society. Spain once held the world in its hands. In the 16th century, it wasn't Britain that ruled the largest empire on earth, it was Spain. A single crown controlled a global empire stretching from Europe to Africa, from the Americas to Asia. So vast was Spanish territory that people said, "The sun never sets on the Spanish Empire," a phrase later borrowed by the British. But here's the paradox. The richest empire the world had ever seen collapsed under the weight of its own treasure. And the reason it matters today is simple. Just like Spain, we often mistake sudden inflows of money for real wealth, and when that illusion breaks, the crash is always brutal. When Spain stumbled into the New World after 1492, it struck what looked like an infinite jackpot. Gold and silver poured into Spanish hands in quantities no European kingdom had ever imagined. The conquest of Mexico in 1521 destroyed the Aztec Empire and opened access to the rich silver mines of Zacatecas. A decade later, the fall of the Inca Empire unlocked Potosi in Peru, a mountain of silver so vast it earned the name the mountain that eats men. For more than a century, Potosi fed a stream of treasure ships crossing the Atlantic. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain imported an estimated 180,000 tons of silver and 2,000 tons of gold, more silver than all of Europe had mined in the previous 1,000 years combined. This flood of treasure didn't just reshape Spain, it reshaped the world. From Seville and Cadiz, Spanish bullion flowed east into the Mediterranean, north into the Low Countries, and west across the Pacific to Manila, where silver was exchanged for Chinese silk, porcelain, and spices. Spain sat at the center of the first truly global economy. Here's a detail that surprises many. When Jamestown, the first permanent English colony, was founded in 1607 as a struggling swamp. Mexico City already had universities, printing presses, and monumental cathedrals. Lima was thriving. St. Augustine in Florida, founded in 1565, was the first permanent European settlement in what is now the United States, established more than 40 years before Jamestown. Spain wasn't just ahead, it was building global infrastructure while Britain and France were still fumbling with failed colonies. And yet beneath the surface, the empire was hollow. Spain confused treasure with wealth. Silver was real, but how they used it turned strength into weakness. Prices in Spain exploded. Between 1500 and 1600, inflation ran rampant, quadrupling over a century. Ordinary Spaniards found bread, clothing, and basic goods increasingly unaffordable, even as mountains of silver piled up. Why? Because money only holds value when it is scarce enough to be trusted. Imagine a town where bread costs 1 coin. Suddenly, 10 times more coins flood in, but the number of bakers stays the same. Prices soar. That was Spain's fate. Economists call it the price revolution, the first wave of global inflation caused by too much silver chasing too few goods. The elites profited, ordinary people suffered. The more silver Spain imported, the poorer its people became. Spain's problems ran even deeper. Instead of investing in productive industries, it spent its fortune on imports. Italian merchants, Dutch traders, and German craftsmen grew rich, while Spain's own industries withered. Why build factories when treasure fleets arrived every year? Spain became a consumer, not a producer. At the same time, the crown burned staggering sums on war. The Habsburgs saw themselves as defenders of Catholicism after the Reformation, and that mission carried an astronomical cost. Silver bankrolled campaigns against the Ottoman Empire, suppression of the Dutch revolt, and wars with Protestant England. The Spanish Armada of 1588 alone cost millions of ducats, billions today. When it failed, the financial shock was catastrophic. Spain didn't just spend gold, it borrowed against treasure that hadn't even arrived. Banking dynasties like the Fuggers and later Genoese financiers loaned massive sums, expecting repayment from future fleets. If fleets were delayed, destroyed, or captured, Spain defaulted again and again. For state bankruptcies in 50 years, 1557, 1575, 1596, 1607. Imagine ruling the world and still telling creditors, we cannot pay. And into this fragile system sailed the pirates, no longer random marauders, but instruments of economic warfare. England and the Netherlands understood that capturing Spanish treasure fleets didn't just steal silver, it collapsed the crown as credit. Francis Drake, backed by Queen Elizabeth, circumnavigated the globe in the 1580s, plundering galleons worth half of England's annual revenue. Piet Eng captured an entire fleet off Cuba in 1628. Over 11 million guilders in silver, nearly toppling Spain again. Every lost fleet was a sovereign default in real time. Meanwhile, England and the Dutch reinvested that silver into navies, banks, and trade, turning Spain's lifeblood into the foundations of their future empires. Pirates didn't just steal gold, they pulled bricks from the very foundation of Spain's empire. By the early 1600s, Spain still looked mighty on maps, but the empire was hollow. Inflation had eroded domestic prosperity. Debt shackled the crown. Piracy turned Spain's greatest asset into its deadliest weakness. Ordinary Spaniards watched wealth pass them by. Prices rose, wages stagnated, taxes climbed. The world's richest empire was eating itself alive. Meanwhile, rivals learned the deeper lesson. Britain built colonies that generated lasting economic value, producing tobacco, sugar, timber, and later cotton. Chartered companies like the East India Company and London's banks created systems that generated wealth continuously. The Dutch founded the Amsterdam Stock Exchange and turned their navy into a weapon of commerce. When they captured Spanish silver, they reinvested it, compounding their power. The crucial difference: Spain measured wealth in treasure. Britain and the Dutch measured it in systems. One is finite, the other is self-replicating. History shows which endures. Spain's story isn't just history, it's a warning. Floods of money, whether from mines, credit, or modern printing presses, create the same temptation. Spend it, borrow against it, burn it on wars or luxuries. Without discipline and investment in productivity, money corrodes the foundations of society. The pirate raids of the 1600s have a modern echo. Wealth concentrated into single fleets is vulnerable. Today, economies concentrate wealth into fragile banks and debt markets. One collapse can ripple across the system, just like Piet Eng exposed Spain's financial fragility in 1628. Treasure is not wealth. Silver is not security. No. Real wealth comes from systems that produce value, institutions that endure, and investments in productivity. Spain bankrupted itself believing it could own the world and live on endless silver. Its rivals understood the deeper game and they inherited the future. History doesn't repeat, but its rhythms are hard to ignore. The richest empire in the world collapsed because it confused treasure for wealth. Any society making the same mistake, flooding its economy while hollowing out its foundations, is walking the same path. The question I ascend to whether history will repeat, whether we recognize the warning in time. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers and I'll show you where to look.